Hey, welcome everyone to Homeless in San Diego. My name is Greg Angel. I am joined today by Brandon O'Connell. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Brandon, you're no stranger to podcasts.
Right.
You have your own podcast, Trash Can Talk.
Yeah, we've been doing that I think we started that during COVID, and I was doing it downstairs. So me and my fiance, we have a salon, and we were living above it and then working below. It's like the live-work loft, and then I was using the garage to kind of like sneak my friends in to do a little podcast and sneak them out during.
That was your podcast studio. What's the focus?
That's how it started.
What's the focus of your podcast?
So a lot of it, I mean, you'll definitely find, even though, so like I'm coming up on like 7 years sobriety.
Congratulations.
We do have a lot of like sober people on it.
Yeah.
I feel like we also have a lot of people who just like really face adversity, you know what I mean? In one way or another.
Yeah.
It's actually been really interesting because I'm super open about, me being homeless for a lot of years. It was a lot of years.
Okay.
Like that I didn't have a key to my own place.
Mm-hmm.
And even, like I know a lot of time people do like the couch surfing thing, but I ended up destitutely like under a bridge.
Street homeless.
Street homeless, yeah. And it's a huge difference when people are like, you cannot come in my house. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But it's been really interesting though that the caliber of people that we've had on the podcast and where they are now in life, and I've found a lot of people that operate at this caliber have gone through some things like this.
No kidding.
Yeah.
On our show, I mean, thinking about your show featuring people who have been through resilience and have just resilient people, right?
Right.
This show, most of our guests have experienced homelessness in some way, shape, or form. We've had university presidents on who
Right.
shared about their experience with homelessness.
Right.
Obviously, so many entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
many people who then have used the skills that they needed to overcome homelessness
Yeah.
are now sustaining them in so many ways. Artists, parents, I mean,
Yeah.
you name it, right? It's yeah.
It's almost like once you open the conversation about it, that people are like, you know what? I did have this experience, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or I was living in my car for like 3 weeks and in between this, or, and it has been really cool too, to kind of like, I think too, like with the visually level the playing field. You know what I mean? Because I like when someone can be like, you know what? That person looks just like me.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And now too, like I've almost because like I said, I haven't been homeless now. I think when I first got sober, it was kind of crazy. I had just left jail. Before that, I was in Salvation Army, and when I got out of jail, I went back to my Aunt Kathleen's house, and I had been 9 months sober, so I just assumed like there'd be this like welcome home party. They'd be celebrating, oh, Brandon's back, you know what I mean? But that wasn't the reality. They were just like, all right, great, like we've seen you do this before, so where are you gonna stay? And I remember my response being like, well, the only place I know that I've ever stayed where you can be homeless is like Skid Row. And we were in Burbank, and it was like this awesome Christmas day, and I'm like, this is amazing, and I'm sober, and I had the idea that my family was really proud and ready to welcome
you back with open arms,
and my brother was just like,
help
no.
you with that reintegration,
right? And it was at the time it was the hardest thing for me to understand, and I know I carried a lot of resentment towards my brother for a couple years during that period. But it was like you said, with people that have kind of gone through this and business owners and the things that you learn from those instances that have made, everyday life a little bit easier to handle.
Yeah.
Because a lot of days I wake up and I go, at least it's not like that.
Yeah, because you've been through so much worse. You've experienced the real harshness. Brandon, do you want to back up and share a little bit about your journey and your life?
So I'm from Los Angeles.
Where in LA?
We're from the valley, so Burbank is where
Yeah.
my family still is at. I was like grew up in Burbank, Glendale
All
area.
right. I was born in Tarzana Hospital.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I was Pasadena Hospital. So we ended up moving here. My dad kind of when I was young, I was moving towards the lifestyle of drugs, rock and roll. It's just what I liked. You know what I mean? I was already kind of like riding my bike over to sketchy places from Burbank, and I think my dad kind of realized like, man, maybe these guys don't really stand a chance over here in Los Angeles, and maybe we should relocate to San Diego. You know
How
what I
old
mean?
were you?
I was in 7th grade.
Okay. Yeah.
So
13,
13, 12,
14.
13,
Yeah,
14. And we moved over here, and man, it was like a total culture shock. You know what I mean? Like San Diego is like so much different. I remember showing up and like I had like my Nirvana shirt and like like the red Dickies shorts, and I was like this punk. Like it's weird because in LA, like the punk rock, like goth, that was like the bigger, you know what I mean, the bigger crowd, you know what I mean, and it wasn't like a small crowd, and when I got here, there was like 5.
Where in San Diego?
So I went to Oakcrest in Encinitas.
Oh yeah, okay.
And
It's a little different than the Valley.
yeah, and it was funny too because like I remember when I got there, like those gothic kid, like you know what I mean, the couple of gothic punk kids were really outcasted.
Yeah.
Like they had like one table they could sit at, and I went, not like I was like super popular in LA Burbank, but like I mean I knew everyone. I'm a pretty funny guy, so like I've always used that to like just attract this big crowd. And I remember just like I'd always be cracking jokes, and at first I was like the butt of the joke. Then people started liking me around here and inviting me to parties, and eventually like I did really good junior high. I went to San Diego Academy for high school. I was really, at that point though, I was really acting out. Like I just had to be the center of attention, to the point where they at San Diego are like, dude, we just can't have you. You're like a terror. Like, you're a smart kid, but very disruptive.
2 questions. Do you know why you were that way? And if so, do you want to share?
I mean, so like at a young age, I just felt that making people laugh. So I've always kind of trying to figure out a way to escape. When I was very young, I had a very abusive childhood with my mother, which was I didn't understand it. So
how could you?
yeah, I mean it made no sense. Like I would just come home, and for whatever reason she decided to take out some anger physically on me. There was a lot of like real like mental, like in retrospect, being an adult now, I mean just like these things she would do, locking me in rooms for hours outside of the house, and a lot of my youth was trying to figure out what is going on over here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would leave the house, and I'm just like, when I left the house, I'm like, I'm out. Like I'm free. I got whatever the amount of time was at school, I got some time to be free. I got some time to be a kid. But like any minute this is gonna end, and I got to go back to this like mental like war zone with her, and I think a lot of it was when my parents divorced. A lot of the anger that my mother had towards my father was taken out on me, because it was so hard to be around her. I would always say things like, I don't love you, I only love Dad. Please, can I just go live with them? Why do I have to go through this? And I think like when I went to school, I just didn't want to live any part of that life. You know what I mean?
Of course.
And sometimes too, when people, like I said, when I showed up to Encinitas, that outcast thing really hit me hard.
Yeah.
When I went from being like friends with everyone in Burbank to sitting at a table with 3 or 4 kids. You know what I mean? And I just did everything possibly to be liked by everyone.
Because you didn't have that.
Didn't have it at home. Yeah. And
Brandon, that's awful what you went through.
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing.
Oh yeah, definitely. As I got older, I mean it's super interesting too for like how much work that I've done on myself now.
Yeah.
And how many years, like a lot of the times too. So basically I got into like using hard drugs at about 17 years old, and it was a very fast. I was really into the punk scene. I was playing music like one of my friends like still like they had one of the bigger metal bands that's out. We were like playing shows with them, touring. I was like straight edge punk. But the second that I just remember the first day I tried a drug.
Yeah.
The first thing I tried was.
You remember it that clearly?
Oh yeah. I remember taking a hit of a cigarette that day and just spinning from that first hit of cigarette.
From a cigarette.
And my friends were already smoking weed and they were doing other things. And I was like, dude, what else do we have like this? And, the same thing they said, the cigarette, what do you mean?
Yeah.
What does it even do? They all smoke cigarettes.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, I guess they forgot that first time that they got lightheaded from their first drag of a cigarette,
Mm-hmm.
And my friend's like, well, do you want to smoke some weed? And I'm like, yeah, smoke some weed. And none of these things were really my thing. You know what I mean? I was like, but this is cool. I don't feel anything right now. I'm just high. They're like, well, dude, do you want a drink? And I was like, sure. This is like the first day that I hit a cigarette earlier that day. And so my friend, they always had a party. So they're like, Brandon smoked weed and drink. Let's invite everyone and let's party today.
You're 17?
Yeah, I was about like 17, yeah. And that night, one of my friend's sisters came over and she had a Xanax. So I took like a Xanax bar, and this is the first, you know what I mean? And I was out. And at this point, everyone's like, I remember like coming back, and it's like the first day I ever used, like someone's like wiping a cold towel on me and like waving, you know what I mean? Like, so like, I mean, I feel like that day was like, I don't know if I just like blacked out, but like, I mean, it was like maybe like the first time I tried drugs, overdosed. And I remember coming back and being like, all right, we got to do this. You know what I mean? And I don't know, you know what I mean? It's like, to this day, then I don't know really like what I was escaping from, but I know that like from a very young age, waking up and like never feeling safe is something that like I always kind of carried with me.
And you were, I would imagine, escaping from.
Yeah. And I mean, quickly, like within the week, I found in my friend circle, there was a couple kids already like they're smoking heroin. And I mean, I remember sitting at my friend Scott's house. These guys were smoking heroin on the foil, and them just being like, dude, you want to try this? And I was like, tried it. And that one, I was like, this is it. Like, I don't know why nobody showed me this. Like, after one hit, I was like, I feel good. I feel like I can still do things. Like, I have control. It doesn't feel like what happened with the drinking and the weed and the Xanax at the same time. But I was like, I don't feel scared. I don't feel, you know what I mean? And I, immediately I liked how you could, when you're smoking it, you could like gauge, like, all right, I could just, until I'm comfortably numb. I'll just take enough hits till I'm comfortably numb. The crazy thing about that is my friend Scott, his mom's boyfriend. So when you smoke heroin, this smells like horrible, like burnt something. I mean, smoking on foil. I remember my friend's mom's boyfriend walked in the room and he was sick from, this guy's an adult, like 40 something years old. He was sick and he smelled it. And he's like, what are you guys doing? And everyone's like, dude, nothing. What are you talking? You know what I mean? What's up? He's like, I could smell that.
Yeah, he knows.
Yeah.
That's a terrifying, like, from straight edge to smoking heroin. And, I, again, appreciate you sharing in such detail, because I think for our listeners, for those who have similar experiences, for those who don't, you're very clear in painting the picture of, you know, what led to that and how quickly things devolved into that situation.
I think too, I mean, I a lot of the times in like retrospect, I feel like I went so long without any tools to cope with what I was feeling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so little outlets to even talk about it. And the crazy part too is like, even after being like 21, 22, like as I got older, my mom still had a lot of power over me on how I'd feel. Like,
of course,
one phone call,
she's your mom.
Could just be like, send me off the deep end. And I think why I delved so heavily into drug use was because it literally was like the answer to my problem. Like, nobody ever gave me any other solution that could possibly make me feel okay. You know what I mean? It was super crazy because I want to say about like 21, 22, like I had moved out of my dad's house. We had gotten a really nice apartment in Cardiff, like on Edinburgh. Like, we had the beach view. I was working at a Cold Stone Creamery, and I was working at Lacadia Pizzeria, and I was making like really good money. I was like serving, I was using like every day. My best friend, and the one that I like used with every day, we always talked. Since I was from LA, we would always talk about moving to LA, me moving back. And one day he just like got up and moved. And I wanted to be the first one to like move back. And you know what I mean? He moved, and he calls me and he's like, listen, I'm over here in Koreatown. He's like, I'm right near this place called Skid Row, and you got to come check it out. Now, just think about this too. Anyone else would think Skid Row, like, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, looking at Skid Row, you're like, wait, so this place with tents?
I mean, for those who know what Skid Row is,
right.
who have been there, and then those who don't even know, but just the name.
Yeah,
right?
the name.
And you're saying in that moment.
So when he said this, I'm like, well, what do you mean? Because my dad used to bring me there. Yeah. So like my dad would.
Why would your dad bring you there?
He would bring blankets and things, you know what I mean? And he had, when we were younger, he had just got sober. I think I just gave him like a 37-year cake token.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but when he first got sober, I mean, it's this natural instinct. You first get sober, you want to help everyone. I always give back, you know what I mean?
So you'd been there before.
So I'd been there before, so I'm like, dude, what do you mean? That's like the worst place on earth.
Yeah.
He's like, check it out. You know how like in San Diego, you're just stuck waiting in parking lots for like 3 or 4 hours every day waiting for the Connect? He's like, these guys dispense balloons like a gumball machine. It takes 2 minutes. You got drugs. And I was like, he like didn't even finish. I was like, I remember sitting at our thing and I'm looking up Amtrak just to like go now. Like, let me just get over there now. So like, I mean, I think the next day I leave, go on the Amtrak, go to visit him. I'm working. I had the job at Cold Stone, the house in Cardiff. I had a lot of stuff too, because I was making good money. Never any real parental. You know, my dad was like the solid person in my life, but he was very busy working. So like, I didn't know about, you know.
He didn't know that you were using.
I think at this point he probably had a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah. And when I went out there though, we go to Skid Row and boom, I was like, I love this. Like, it was just, I mean,
if that doesn't help explain addiction to somebody who doesn't understand addiction, but who does know what Skid Row is and what it looks like and feels like for most, you know.
I mean, think about it. This I had every Jordan you could want in my closet, all the clothes. We lived on a corner spot in Cardiff, beach view out our window. Like all the art, Mark Almera, you know what I mean? I love art. Shepard Fairey, like original prints. Wow. Dude, like I was an art collector. I had a vinyl collection, just like mind blowing. Just every piece of vinyl from hip hop, rap, punk,
and
hardcore.
You just abandoned it?
Dude, I just got up that day and boom, went.
So, okay, so you go up there, and then you mentioned, earlier you mentioned the story is getting out of jail at some point.
Yeah.
So where?
I mean, so that's like really where it started. It felt like a week, but we'd probably been there like a couple months, and now he's like losing his apartment. You know what I mean? And he's gonna move back to San Diego. I left my apartment. I was, pretty much on my own. I ended up going to detox for the first time, and you know what I mean. I just called my dad, and now he knew, and like officially,
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm really bad. Like I need detox. We ended up. He came out of pocket for it, like, and it was hefty. You know what I mean? Like,
do you know what year this is, or like how
dude,
long ago this is?
I was 21 and I'm 39 now.
Okay, so about 18 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, even just 5 to 10 years ago here in San Diego, there was no detox available unless you could pay it. We opened our detox here at this location for that exact reason. And it just wasn't any available. And that wasn't that long ago. So you go back that far, there's
cash.
You have to pay out of pocket.
Yeah, cash pay.
Yeah, or private insurance if you have it. Yeah. So that's your first engagement with some sort of treatment. Detox. But.
And when I left Cry Help, I ended up getting linked up with this thing called, at the time it was it's called Music Cares now. So like, I mean, like I told you, I was playing a little music, you know what I mean, for a while, and luckily, like we played with this really big band, and the touring that I did with them it allotted me some treatment through Music Cares, and they helped me get into sober living and stuff like that, and that was my introduction to the program. My dad had been sober, but I mean, it was also, I mean, just moving there. I stayed at that sober living for like years after Cry Help, like years, not getting more than like 90 days sober. And the same thing there was like cash pay. So like my dad was paying for it. And I mean, it was just like, they wanted to keep me in there. I was really not getting it. I started another band in there, and that was another thing. So like, I was singing in this band, and then the band really was like, we got to keep him in here, but I like couldn't stay sober.
So what changed? What was there? One thing, a number of things that finally made the difference? Because if I'm following the timeline, that was 18 years ago.
Yeah,
and I have 7 years. 7 years.
Coming up on
so
7.
There's an 11-year gap there.
Right. It was really, so. I mean, me getting it was very hard. Like it was
a matter of.
Dude, basically, it's like, I mean, I left that sober living. I started getting arrested for like petty thefts, just doing whatever I could to get drugs, you know what I mean? Petty theft, grand theft, possession. So I was like super in and out of jail. And like, it's really crazy because like, I mean, I want to say like, so 10 years ago, after just like a tumultuous, like, it was really crazy because like I told you before we started this, I was talking about being a clothing stylist.
Yeah.
So like I went from like getting into that sober living, like messing up, like playing in a band, the band not really working out. People started hiring me to work on sets. You know what I mean? I'm like whiting out music video sets. Like I remember I did the Snoop Dogg Pharrell, that song, like beautiful, I just want you to know. Like I was on set, like whiting the sets out every time they do a scene. And like I'd have these like really highs in my sobriety and then like tumultuous lows, you know, like just burn everything to the ground. And it just went like that for years. Like I the same thing, I was like doing clothing stylist work. It was like super high, crash down low.
Do you think there's anything that could have sped up the process of you, in your words, getting it, you know?
So like every single time that I'd mess up, I would come up with a reason why. So I just really don't think that there was anything that could have sped up the process, because 10 years ago, I remember I figured out that I don't have a problem with drugs and alcohol. I just don't make enough money to do it how I want to. And that's actually kind of been like this thing that I was like, I should be a millionaire. And if I was a millionaire, I'd have no problem because I'd have enough money to do drugs and alcohol.
Did you ever, when you were in treatment, did you ever have a provider or providers who met you where you were at and understood, where you were in that state of change, that you weren't there yet, that you needed to go, you had work to do until you were going to take that next step? Do you feel like you had providers who got that?
See, that's the one thing I feel like now. I feel like there's a lot of places that have this really good approach to it, but like the thing about it is that I mean, 10 years, like I said, so 10 years ago, what happened is I had gotten sober, and then I gotten into the vape industry. This is super weird. I was at a barber shop one day. I was like 8 months sober. This guy walks in here. He's like, "Hey, check this out. This is called the Ego C Twist. It's a vape. It's an electronic cigarette. Like, these are gonna be the hottest thing." And I was like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah. Do you have like any sales skills at all? Because I have 1,000 of them in my garage." And I was like, "I kind of have sales skills. Like, tell me about this thing." He's like, "Yeah, everyone's gonna quit smoking cigarettes, and we're gonna save their lives with these." And at the time, I'm like, "Oh, that's the easiest pitch.
Yeah.
Like, quit smoking cigarettes, and then this will save your life." You know what I mean? And dude, I walked out of that. He gave me like 10. I like walked across the street and sold them within an hour.
Okay.
And then I called him, and I'm like, "Dude, they're gone. Like, what do we do now?" He's like, "Well, take that money, bring it to me. I'm gonna give you these."
So where does this fit into the?
So basically, what happened is I started this like vape empire, dude. And so the thought of like not having enough money to do drugs the way that I wanted to wasn't real.
That no longer was the case.
Yeah, and I had more than enough money than you could ever imagine.
So what
needing.
happened?
And it was the worst that I ever felt. And I really, really, really felt trapped. And
why was it the worst?
so like just from when I was like 17 to like 10 years ago, I just thought that was the solution. And the fact that it wasn't actually sent me into this very suicidal state. I actually, at that point, I started thinking like, dude, there's nothing that I could do to like be like normal. You know what I mean? Like this was.
That must have been such an awful feeling.
Yeah. And I was running a vape store on Brandon Maple called The Factory Vape. And we like, it's like on Google, like I painted the outside of the store pink, like the Yelp reviews of horrible ones of this guy's like drunk, he's covered in, like they're all there. And I was miserable. You know what I mean? I eventually like tried to commit suicide for the first time. And so since the thing of like not having enough money to do drugs the way I wanted to was gone, I came up with the idea is that you could just kill yourself with enough drugs. Like, I didn't want to jump in front. I remember standing at a train and looking at it and going like, man, if I jump in front of this right now, what if it doesn't work? Like, what if this head is stuck in a immobile in a, you know what I mean? Like a wheelchair. And I thought the same thing about jumping off a bridge. And I was like, well, I know that I have more than enough money to buy more than enough drugs to like end this all right now. And I remember attempting the first time and waking up in BHS in North Hollywood, and it didn't work. The first time I woke up in Glendale. It was a Glendale health service place. I was in the mental health ward. I was 5150 in Glendale, and it didn't work. And they actually presented the idea to me, maybe you have a mental health problem. Maybe you don't even have a drug problem. You might just be mental health.
No one had gone there before?
I never thought of that. It was like the most interesting, you know what I mean? It really, that day kind of changed my life. But the only thing I'm not saying that they dropped the ball, but like, so they presented the idea, and then I remember them going like, so all you got to do is like, here's like 90 Seroquel, and then here's the same amount of Wellbutrin. Take this every day, and like, you're going to start getting better. And that is the biggest lie. You know what I mean? Like, this was like...
Was there any therapy or counseling?
There was nothing. Like, these guys sent me on my way after like 3 or 4 days of a 5150 hold with the medication. Well, so like...
So, I mean, I'm interrupting a little bit, but it's for our listeners, what you just described, getting access in a short-term center, happens every day.
Yeah.
Every day. It happens here in North County. It happens in San Diego. It happens in LA.
Right.
Because the behavioral healthcare system is not a congruent system.
Right.
And so there are places that provide that 3 to 4 days, and they provide 3 months or 30 days worth of medication. And they do their best, in the best case scenario, to connect the individual to longer-term treatment.
Right.
But there's challenges there. And a lot of times, that longer-term treatment just isn't available.
Right. And the thing, too, though, and I like never before would I have had any sort of finances to, but like I was running this vape store, and like if there would have been an option of like, hey, why don't we get you enrolled? But there was, I mean, I don't know that day if they dropped the ball or how it worked, but I left with that medication, and I remember giving it like a couple of days, like I'm going to keep taking it. And then I'm like, no, I don't, you know what I mean? Yeah, I don't feel it. Like,
yeah.
So I took all of it. I took all of it with the drugs, everything. And I was like, I'm done. You know what I mean? Mm. And the crazy thing is then the same thing is like I woke up again in another place, and that was the North Hollywood one. But now I was very, very, very defeated.
Yeah.
Because I was like, wait, so the money didn't work, and then this exit plan isn't working?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what the hell is going on? You know what I mean? I tried it one more time, and at Hawthorne Medical, when they saw me come back to back to back to back with these suicide attempts, they basically were able to hold me there like 15 days.
Okay.
And I think I had a really, really, really good eye-opening experience there. Because I'd never seen a mental health facility. I'd just only seen jail.
Yeah.
So like, you know, basically like they're like, oh, this guy has a problem, and so let's put him in jail. And like, even though his problem's mental health and maybe, you know, like rehab or something could really help him, let's just teach him all these ways that he can keep stealing, robbing, credit card fraud, all this shit to have money to buy the drugs that he needs. You know what I mean?
Which also happens every single day, that somebody with a behavioral health condition ends up in jail.
I was a really, really, really good guy. You know what I mean? Like I was a really good kid that liked art, playing music, like no criminal in me, had no hatred towards any races. And then, you know what I mean? I was forced to like learn this style of living to inhabit that, you know, like the jail system.
Well, and I mean, you just touched on it, but we won't even get into the racialized hierarchy of jail system and all that stuff. I mean, it's a whole other series of
it could be its own podcast.
Bad things, its own series of podcasts.
Yeah.
Right? Well, I know you wanted to talk about reintegration programs. You want to talk about holistic approaches to treatment. Is there more in your personal journey that you want to share that?
I mean, so it perfectly kind of like goes into that realm, because I really, so like when approached with like, oh, you have a mental health problem, the third suicide attempt that was like unsuccessful, now I'd given up on that. And I actually, so like for the first time, I found myself really being like, God, what do we do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what are we going to do? Why am I here? How are we going to fix this? I just, you know, went from someone that thought God works for them and not for me, to like, I had nothing else I had no people. Like at this point, nobody wanted to be around me. And this ongoing verbiage in my head that is always, you know, still to this day. And I keep it like this. I always keep it like I'm talking to God. You know what I mean? Like I keep this fluid. But what are we gonna do? And like I said, the mental health thing really, you know, it made sense to me. Like I was like, there is problems that I have that I'm not addressing, that like if I did address, maybe living life would be a little bit easier. But at the same time, addressing those problems is not easy. I was very like fortunate to had already had a strong footing in Alcoholics Anonymous in Los Angeles area. And I heard a lot of people talk about doing the steps. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, in all the years I went to meeting, it's something I never did. And it was really interesting because in Alcoholics Anonymous, there's the fourth step, and I did this inventory on my life, you know what I mean? And I kind of started going through it, and it was really easy in the beginning because they're like, everyone that you have a resentment toward, you write them down. So I could do this all day long, you know what I mean? And then the hard part came because they're like, we need you to look at your part in this. You know what I mean? And it was actually very, very hard for me to look at my part in things because I was such a victim. You know what I mean? I just always the victim mentality. And it was really hard. I remember writing it out and having to go over it with my sponsor. He's like, dude, like, you literally, like, what did you do? And I'm like, no, you don't understand. You know what I mean? And some things, like the thing with my mom, like it wasn't my fault. But you know what I'm doing right now is that I'm holding on to it and I'm hating her and I'm letting it dictate my life. You know what I mean? So my part in that is what the holding on, and I'm not coming to acceptance towards her. You know what I mean? I was, like I said, very fortunate. My fiance now, she did something called Landmark Forum, and she enrolled me in the Landmark Forum. And in a weekend, you kind of actually do, besides the spiritual part of the program, you go through very similar thing in the program. And it was the best thing that ever happened in my life. It is the guy brought me up into the front and he just ran me through what was holding me back. And I didn't say, like, you know what I mean? This guy figured out, like, in 2 minutes of talking to me, he's like, it's your mom. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, let's go into this. And basically he's like, what you're doing now is you're withholding your love from her, and you're actively trying to, like, attack her anytime that you talk to her. And that's what I was doing. My mom would be like, hey, you know, like, I love you, and I hope this money helps. And I'd be like, yeah, awesome, great. Like, hang up. I would call her just to, like, take digs at her.
Jab, yeah.
And it was interesting because they break us, and they're like, you're going to go deal. And in the AA, it's the 9th step. And I wasn't there yet, but I did it. And I just remember, like, the chains just breaking away that day.
Sounds like that was a huge breakthrough.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah. And now I was able to kind of, like, approach, like, I just very healing from that. During COVID, what happened is we had so I was working in the event industry, this, like, right before COVID, and now how I kind of got into, like, the field I'm in now. I was working in the event industry. I was doing Coachella, Stagecoach, Camp Flognaw, like, all the big festivals, and COVID hit. Everything shut down. I thought that this was, like, the most foolproof, like, job, that nothing could touch it. I was like, dude, I'm making like $80,000 a year my first year sober. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I think it was my third year, actually. Third year sober, and this is the best job in the world. Boom, shuts down. Someone introduced me to the Department of Rehabilitation, and they're like, you know, you qualify to, like, go back to school through this program. And I was like, what is this? And dude, I ended up going back to school, and I really, really excelled in, like, sociology.
Sociology, okay.
Yeah. And I mean, so sociology, I was really into just, like, the prison reform kind of stuff like that. And I joined this thing called Transitions Club. It's at Maricopa Post. Or no, it's just justice impacted students.
Okay.
So yeah, it's like even people, like kids whose parents were in the system their whole life. And I just got really into the, you know, helping the people out, and them helping me a lot, dude. They really helped me a lot.
That's cool. And so were you going to Maricopa?
I was going to Maricopa, yeah.
Nice.
I just paused this last semester because my work life is, like, so big, but I plan on going back because I also really, really got into, like, political science, because I have, like, a pretty well, like, just from me doing marketing for a bunch of companies, and political science, like, and marketing, I feel like go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Like, once, yeah.
So I know that you ended up working in the field of helping people.
Yeah.
Who have connections to Department of Rehab to get employment.
Yeah.
So you were in vocational employment services.
Yeah. So I was with Vantage Point for, like, 3 years, and primarily when I got there, we just helped people with disabilities. So I helped them start a reintegration program, which we aimed our services to help people post-incarceration and battling addiction. And it was really cool because when I started it, I was like cold calling everywhere. I was cold calling places, and I was going, hey, we started this program. We have this curriculum. Would you mind if I come run a group at your center? And a lot of places, you know, they all turned it down. And so I was living here. I called like a lot of the places here. One of the people at NoHo Recovery was like, dude, I heard about what you're doing. He's like, I want you to come give a presentation. I really talked you up, you know, to all the guys over here. Go do the presentation. Boom, the first treatment center takes us. Like, yeah, let's go. Let's do your group. Now I was like really just figuring it out, like group to group, like how I was going to present this to a group.
And you're presenting what?
We were making people, like, we would do resumes. Yeah. We'd go over like interview skills. We'd go over how to like address when people are asking about your background, you know what I mean? Yeah. And what I used. The crazy thing was, in a group setting, it was so much better because I was doing one-on-one.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, this is like, it's wasting. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm wasting it.
We have a big group here. Anything you want to share for those who are listening, and they either they have those barriers, they're looking for employment now, or we have a lot of listeners who also are in the sector who are doing this work.
Yeah. So, I mean, one is like education. You know what I mean? Like, even when I got into production work, which I highly suggest anyone that's getting sober to like get into production, that's stage production, event production. I mean, dude, the options are limitless in that industry of how far you could go. You know what I mean? I definitely would still be doing it if I didn't have the calling to help people. But it's just, you don't sleep good at night when you don't live. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just remember the last time I did the Jesus King record release for Kanye. I was like one of 7 people like doing the creative design layout of the event, you know? And I remember we were working like 23-hour days.
Yeah.
And those days I was like, I'm building this thing for this guy, and like it's going to get torn down, and I'm putting everything into it. I should be building this for people where they can keep utilizing what I build. You know what I mean? And then they could help me build, and we build it together.
That's beautiful. Is that when you went to Vantage Point and began doing that work?
Yeah. So I was over after the COVID thing shut down, went back to school. They actually hired me to help them with marketing through Instagram. And then I saw what the company was doing. And I was
okay. That's funny.
I told Michelle, I'm like, this is what I want to do.
Any other tips that you want to give people related to,
like I said, the education is big. Like, stay with the education. Yeah. Resumes are really, like, get your resume down. Since I'm like post-incarceration, I go to every single interview with a resume. And when people start to like go too deep into like, you know, well, what about this thing that you did? Or what about this thing? I'm like, well, as you can see now, like, I'm a student at Miracosta, and I'm working for this company as their head of marketing, and I'm the creative director over this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, I always highly suggest people to like, you know, always bring the interview back to what highlights your personal development and your skill set. And just, dude, not to give up. Like, there was a lot of people that told me you can't do this. So that's like a huge misconception of people post-incarceration. You can do anything that you want. It might be a little harder for you to get to the finish line. But like I said, there's so many times where I'm like, well, here's the education. This is what I put into myself. These are the things that I've done. So like, to really like prohibit me from coming in this position is like hindering your company.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe you should be open to hiring someone like me. And I've had this conversation with multiple companies. You know what I mean? So if you feel like, it's the biggest misconception. Like, I remember people saying you can't vote. Yeah, I can. You know what I mean? Like, just these things that people say, you're like, no, that's not real.
Yeah, it's another take on education, educating on the opportunity. And I love how you spin it and turn it around and say, listen, here are the things that I can do for you, or that someone with these experiences can do for you. So that's what you started doing at Vantage Point. Now you're striking out on your own. Right?
Yeah.
So basically, share about that?
Yeah. So I have a merchandising program at NoHo Recovery. So this is people. It's in the same vein. So basically, like now what I taught them is I started this merchandising group. I have a really, really strong background in merchandising from like my younger years. Like I got into screen printing, and I've always kind of been in that. So we teach them everything about merchandising, and then it's a class, and then we even have people from FITM come and like teach them what I don't know.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
Yeah, Carolyn Mercado. She took our first group through, and she's from FITM.
FITM is Fashion Institute
Design and Merchandising. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not like this merchandising class group that I do is like very well thought out. It's very well planned out.
It's a very prestigious school, FITM.
Yeah. And we've literally had some like, really good. We've had like our clients like go on to collab and design merchandising and
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm doing that now, and I'm trying to open that in Oceanside.
Okay.
So I'm looking to partner with this company that's coming. They're opening a new one called Moment of Clarity, and they'll be in Oceanside. So we're looking to bring our second merchandising program into Oceanside because I live here now. So, it makes sense to have something closer to home. And I want to keep growing, stuff like that in different facilities that would allow it.
Yeah, I'd love to connect and talk about opportunities to work together through interfaith, either
definitely.
through our own treatment programs, but also we have post incarceration reintegration programs, and we're working in Oceanside, here in Escondido, throughout North County, throughout San Diego, and providing the types of empowering services that you're talking about. It's a huge need for that.
Yeah, definitely.
Brandon, I can't thank you enough for being so open and so illustrative and telling your journey, sharing today.
Yeah. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah. It's my honor. Like, I feel very, I'm very grateful that you, took the time to be here, but then that you have been so vulnerable and shared all of this.
Right.
People will connect with this. People will be inspired by who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah.
And what you've done today is going to make a real impact.
Definitely.
And what you're doing in your work, and that's self-evident, the impact that you're making there.
Yeah. It's definitely like, you guys know, this is like a never-ending battle. So like I went from like
never-ending opportunity.
Yeah. Never-ending opportunity. I went from like one, I remember working 23 hours a day production. But like I said, I feel so much better building something that's not being torn down. Like, I remember leaving Coachella and being like, dude, I can't believe we're like, it's gone.
It's gone.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I just put every last bit of me into that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
And the beauty of what we do is that we get to try to build that in every individual, every family,
dude,
right? And like, no matter what comes after that, it matters, but it doesn't matter, because if you can make an impact for that one individual, that has
Asher Eads. He's basically the one that runs my day-to-day on the merchandising company, and he was a client. And this is the client that no one believed in, even him. And I think he's one of the I always tell him, I'm like, dude, you might be one of the next biggest designers. Like, I've never seen someone just, like, he's got it. You know what I mean? He runs that company flawlessly, too. Like, I don't have to be there during the day every day. You know what I mean? It's amazing. And he has the exact same story as me.
Well, you're amazing, Brandon. Yeah. I'm so thankful to get to meet you. I know we'll get to work together and
definitely
hopefully spend more time together.
The backyard.
Right?
Yeah, we lived over here now.
Yeah. What do you want to, anything else you want to share? Anything else you want to speak about today?
I mean, like, we're just, the merchandising program is pretty awesome. Anyone that like wants to check it out, my Instagram has everything. So if you follow at Trash Can Cut, you'll literally get like the day-to-day of my life. You know what I mean?
All right, so we'll link to at Trash Can Cut on Instagram. We're going to link to the Trash Can Talk podcast, right? Which, as you were sharing earlier, you interview people who share about their resilience. And I want to thank you for sharing about your resilience today. We always do a call to action, so I want to give you an opportunity if there's something you want to share, something else more you want to share with our listeners, look into our crew here helping us out, Daniel and Logan. Guys, anything else that you want to ask about? You want to make sure we cover today?
Just if there's any specific links, like I'll put your Instagram, but if there's anything like you really want linked on top of, I'll make sure that's in the bio.
No, I should be. That's good. The podcast and the Instagram, and plus too. I mean, just like even anyone watching, like if people are so surprised when they DM me and I DM back, but like I really do. Like anyone that's like struggling, going through it, like you're like, I don't know how I'm gonna make it through like today. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like, please reach out to me. You know what I mean? I can't stress it enough. I literally DM every single person back, and they're just like, there's nothing. You know what I mean? Like from somebody who tried to take their life 3 times in a row. Like my life is so beautiful, and just like give yourself a chance.
There's your call to action.
Yeah.
Brandon, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone.